I come today to praise the legacy of Barefoot Sanders' Washington tenure when he served as Assistant Attorney General of the United States and then as Legislative Counsel to the President of the United States in the 1960s. When the stream of laws that formed the Great Society came pouring out of Congress 40 years ago, they did not bear the name of Barefoot Sanders, but they carried his fingerprints so firmly and indelibly that his mark is and will forever be a part of our history. He was first into the Department of Justice. There he was the point man, shepherding the Johnson administration's civil rights proposals through the shoals of the legislature, the Congress. On one measure alone, which more than any other changed the way we live in America today, the Voting Rights Act, striking down the artificial barriers that prevented black citizens from exercising their most precious constitutional rights, Barefoot Sanders was more responsible for its passage than any other person, save for the President of the United States. Now that is not just the biased view of this friend of 50 years. That is the opinion of the man that Barefoot Sanders worked for, the Attorney General of the United States. It was also the opinion of President Johnson, who ultimately brought Barefoot over to the White House to manage his entire legislative program. Even in the troubled last half of the Johnson years, when the president faced an increasingly divided country, with Barefoot leading the way, he got 80 landmark laws passed by an increasingly reluctant Congress, including the administration's third major civil rights bill, the Fair Housing Act, and thereby furthering the historic process of making real the promise of justice. Now, Barefoot did it all with a modesty and credibility that were legendary among his colleagues and congressmen alike. He worked with some towering egos without ever acquiring one himself, or without ever losing his cool or cowering in the face of antagonism. Barefoot worked not for glory, and certainly not for any financial gain. He worked for results, and results were what he got for the betterment of us all. President Johnson said, and I quote, "I certainly could not have asked for a better man to represent me to the Congress," end of quote. And Johnson had a half a lifetime's experience with the Congress to back up that claim. Lyndon Johnson's own tribute to Barefoot Sanders was contained in his letter to Barefoot at the end of his administration, when he said, and again I quote, "I will always remember the gifts of a wise mind and loyal heart that you brought to me," end of quote. All of us are beneficiaries of that wise mind and a heart that always was so loyal for the good of the country. Barefoot Sanders stands tall in the history of our time. His own story is in the tradition of unsung heroes whose passage makes the difference in the lives of us all, in the common life that we share. I think all of us here today know the oft-told story of Barefoot's successful campaign to be president of the University of Texas student body. When the students awakened on election day, to find imprints of a bare foot all over the campus to remind them how to vote and what to do. I am absolutely certain that when historians review the advances of social justice over the last 50 years, they too will find a bare foot firmly imprinted on the landscape of this era.